And we are live with today's SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. It's our pre-show. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I need to do a few extra little things on here. Oh, I don't even have the right graphics here. What good is it if we don't have the right graphics? This is why we have a pre-show right here. All right, where are all of our graphics? There they are. We're going to put that there. And then we're going to put this here. Boop. And let's see if it changes. Yes, it does. Okay. That part's good. And let's check cameras. Cameras are good. YouTube is telling me things are okay. We probably should check this. That all looks good. Do we not have a... There it is. Now what about this and this? So it's all working. It's all working. I guess we should put up our where are you joining from poll so that we can see where people are connecting from. There you go. And that way you're able to use this. There's the graphic. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. People checking in already from all over the place. We've got folks checking in from Ohio and Iraq and Dallas and Maryland and California and Nigeria, and even Canada. Got folks in Poland and India and Houston and Virginia. There's Florida. Hello, Floridians. It's a little rainy out today. It's a little cloudy out today. Now, why am I seeing multiple chats? This will not do. There's just too much going on there. Let's pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. There we go. That's better. Hope everybody's doing well. Where do I stay? We are a Florida-based company. So I am in Florida. Florida. Let's see if I can get this. That looks ready. That looks ready. Oh, we got a lot going on. We got folks that are checking in from all over the world. I should probably plug this phone in. Make some of this happen anyway. There we go. We got a lot to go through today. Boom. All right. That's noisy. Let's turn off that noise. There we go. Okay. And it's the Security Plus study group today. We got a little bit of an odd schedule this week because we have our Security Plus study group today, and then tomorrow is our Network Plus study group. Those hardly ever follow each other in that order. But it's been a crazy month. It's been a little bit crazy. My schedule has been as if it was not chaotic before. Now, for some reason, we've turned the volume up on the chaos. So it's just been a little bit more chaotic this month. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility with timing of all of these. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for having some flexibility with me. I appreciate it. And we'll get started here in about a minute and a half. We've got all new questions for Security Plus coming up today. And of course, in the second hour, I will take your questions. You'll notice if you go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, there is a set of Q&A that you can submit to me, and we will talk about that in the second hour. So that's what is going on today. Let's see if I can put this phone somewhere where it's not going to be a problem, where it's not going to be a challenge. We got Keith in the chat room says, I passed the 601 on the last day it was available, July 31st, less than a month ago. Congratulations on your Security Plus. Now you're locked in for 3 years. Doesn't matter what they do with the Security Plus at this point. Waiting until the last day, probably not the best way to do it, but when you pass it, everything seems to work out. Everything seems to happen okay. So I'm glad to hear that was successful. Otherwise, you just sort of have to reset everything, because the 701 is a very different exam. Certainly it's the same topic, of course, security, but a lot of things have changed. So now that we're all in 701, it's been a month, we've been working on it. It's not quite as dramatically different now because 601's old news for most of us. For the English-speaking countries. Non-English-speaking, there's still 601 that they're doing. So that's how that works. Yes, you should be studying for the 701. We'll talk about that in a moment too, because it's now top of the hour already. That happened fast, right? We should probably work on doing a live stream at this point. There it is. Let's make sure that we're able to connect to our laptop because it has been a couple weeks. Does it even work at this point? Yes, it does. Okay, well, that means we should do a live stream. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2024 Security Plus Study Group. This is the SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group, coming to you live from Messer Studios. Thanks for joining us today. Today I have, in our first hour, a bunch of Q&A that I've created specifically for this live stream to help you study for your SY0-701 exam. And I also, in the second hour, will be opening up the chat. There's a place where you can submit questions. And so in the second hour, I'll answer your questions. So I'll ask the questions in the first hour. You get to ask the questions in the second hour, and we'll step through everything that you need to know from there. If you are here live, and we are here live today on this stream, if you're watching this on the live stream, you can participate in the live stream. This isn't just to sit back and watch. You can submit your questions, the answers to these questions, or questions to me in the second hour using these instructions on your screen. You simply go to this particular link, professormesser.com/QA, and you can submit your question. You can submit an answer to the question I ask, or submit a question for me to answer in the second hour. It's one-stop shopping. You just go to one place and it takes care of everything, which is kind of nice. I do have for you a question to see if that link works. So pop open a new browser window, head out to professormesser.com/QA, and there will be a question waiting for you that states a company has begun to implement key stretching. Which of the following would be most associated with this change? Would it be more complex passwords, more complex passwords, secure key storage, stronger encryption, offsite backups, or self-signed certificates? It's got to be one of those, right? Now, the key to any of the questions that we do today is please don't answer in the chat room. You want to instead go to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and submit your question. That is the best way to do it. The general rule is no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. We will come back to this question in just a bit because I'd like to see how you do. It's our rewind question from last month, so we'll have to see how that all works out. Well, thank you for being here. We do one of these live streams for Security Plus every month. We, of course, have our entire history, our archive of all of these are available on our YouTube channel. You can go back and watch any of them at any time. And of course, there's a lot happening on our YouTube channel right now. I'm submitting and posting a lot of videos right now for Network Plus. You can find those, and you can even subscribe to the channel, which would be fantastic. You can do that at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have weekly pop quiz questions for Security Plus. You can find those over on our Twitter, the feed formerly known as Twitter, our X feed at professormesser.com/Twitter. We also have the same questions available in a pretty picture format on Instagram. You can find that at professormesser.com/Instagram. Just a few ways that you can find us out on the World Wide Web, which I think is still a thing. That's still the name, right? That's still what we're calling it. What we are talking about today is no longer, by the way, the SY0-601. I kind of left this in here because it's the last time we're going to be using it. This was a version of the exam that retired on July 31st. We even had some folks in the chat room that passed it on the very last day it was available. But now there's only one Security Plus exam available, and it is the SY0-701. This was released on November the 7th. Of 2023, estimated retirement May 2027. So there's a lot to work through with these questions and these answers, but now there's only one exam that you need to study for, and it's the SY0-701. This should be very easy for you to now understand exactly what to study because you only have one choice, which is great. This is also a single exam that you need to pass. It's 90 minutes long with a maximum of 90 questions. The passing score that you need to earn is a 750 on a scale from 100 to 900. It's an unusual scoring system, but this is the way they do it. This is exactly the same format as the 601 exam. It's a multiple choice test primarily, but there are a number of questions at the beginning, a handful that you will get, that are performance-based questions, and we'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a bit. Well, now we don't have to worry about which exam to take unless you happen to be in a different country. Now, I mentioned the 601 exam was retired. It was retired for English-speaking countries. So there are other versions of the 601 that you can take in other countries right now. You're probably not watching me if you're in one of those other countries, however, because I'm still speaking English at the moment. So this is one of those situations where somewhere in the world, someone is still taking the 601 exam. But this is an advantage that we don't have to worry about that. For us, everything is pretty much going to be the 701. And of course, we have study materials. All of our 701 videos are available for you to watch online for free every minute of every video. But we also have course notes, practice exams, and so much more. We have downloadable versions of the videos. We have audio-only versions of the videos. You can find them all on our website. If you'd like to learn more about those, you can find them at professormesser.com/701SB, or simply use the menus at the top of the website for the Security Plus Success Bundle. We also will archive this video stream on YouTube immediately afterwards. It's done automatically once we finish the live stream. I also will have an audio-only version of this that I publish in a podcast format. So if you have a podcast listening program, maybe you listen to podcasts on your mobile device, maybe you go to Spotify and listen to podcasts there, you can find us in all of those places. If you'd like to add us to your podcast listening program, simply follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/podcast. Podcast. It's an unusual name. We just continue to use it. It's stuck now. We can't get away from it. Also, I will remind you that this replay will be available on YouTube immediately afterwards, but it takes about a day, and somehow, almost like magic, there will be timestamps that will appear in the YouTube video description. These don't happen automatically, as badly as the alleged AI would like to do it. AI is never going to be good enough for doing this type of thing. So we have actual people do this. Thankfully, my marketing manager, Lori, is listening to this replay. She's putting in all of these timestamps and has done this for years and will continue to do so. So you should absolutely have a look at those. They will be added to the YouTube video description in about a day or so, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but they are real nice to have because you can find exactly what you're looking for and jump directly to it in the video. Also, when we're not here doing a live stream, you can probably find us over on our Discord. That is our chat. And of course, we have a Discord server available. If you'd like to join us along with everyone else who's there studying for their A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications, you can find it at professormesser.com/Discord. As if that you didn't see that one coming. It's professormesser.com/Discord to be able to join us in our chat. And that's where we hang out when we're not here on our live streams. I will also let you know eventually you will need to take this exam if you want to earn this certification. And you have to pay, unfortunately, to take this exam. CompTIA expects you to be able to pay to take the exams, but there is a way you could pay less. If you are in the US or Canada, we have discount vouchers available on our website. You can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers, which will give you exactly the same voucher as the CompTIA website, but you're not paying as much as the CompTIA website. There's the difference. We also, of course, give you even more, not just the voucher itself, but I'll give you a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook you cannot buy. It is only available with my success bundles or when you purchase a voucher. So you can't buy that as an individual book. This is a list of all of the tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years for studying for these certification exams and specifically taking the exam itself. There's some tips and tricks that can help you during the exam session. If you're not familiar with what's going on there, you might want to look through those. And you can get that automatically for free when you purchase a voucher from my site at professormesser.com/vouchers. So we have our rewind question. This is a question from last month. Just to get us started, make sure you can get in and answer these. The question again asks, a company's begun to implement key stretching. Which of the following would be most associated with this change? Would it be more complex passwords, secure key storage, stronger encryption, offsite backups, or self-signed certificates? I'm glitching myself, aren't I? Let's see what you answered. we can see that 65% of you say the answer is stronger encryption. About 22% of you say the answer is more complex passwords. 8% say secure key storage, and then only 2% say offsite backups, and only 1% say self-signed certificates. Key stretching is a way to take a key that is usually relatively weak and probably pretty easy to either brute force or crack. This is one where we could make this key stronger by performing a number or process of cryptographic changes to it. We can hash it, and then we can hash the hash, and then we can hash the hash. We could do that a number of times. That's one way that we can make the key stronger. We could also make the key longer by putting it through a specific set of libraries designed to perform key stretching, which is effectively performing a hash of a hash of a hash and similar type functions. This is a great way to make your keys stronger and help prevent someone from being able to easily brute force these. The idea is to make the brute force process one that would take so long and would be so problematic that it's not worth their time. It's not something that they can even reasonably go through to be able to find these passwords and be able to identify the login authentication based on the information or the key that you're using. It doesn't have to be a login. It could just be a key that you're using for encryption or decryption. So that is key stretching, which means if you answered stronger encryption, that's exactly what key stretching is doing because it's making the key longer. Now, there are things that can make the key better. One is to make your passwords more complex. You can make your password have an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter. It could have a number inside of it. It could have a special character, and you can make them a certain number of characters in length. Well, that is important, and certainly we should have strong passwords, but key stretching is not associated with making a password more complex. It is simply one that makes a key longer or more difficult to brute force. And although more complex passwords is useful, the password itself is not associated with key stretching. It would be the encryption behind the password that would be associated with key stretching. So in this particular case, more complex passwords is not the same thing as a password that is better protected with a stronger key. It's a little bit different. So that's why in this case, it would not be more complex passwords. Also has nothing to do with storing the key. It is indeed having stronger encryption, and 65% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. That's the one we were looking for. And I think some of you may have remembered that from our live stream that we did last month. And of course, we will have a rewind question on next month's. That will probably be one of these that we do today. Now let's do some new questions, though. I have one for you. These are at least the first new question that we like to do on these live streams is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are not multiple choice. This is something that is very common on the CompTIA exams, is the first set of questions you get will be questions that are fill in the blank. You have to put a drag and drop scenario. Maybe you have to put them in a particular order. Maybe it's a matching question. There's all kinds of ways to ask a question on these exams, and the performance-based questions is simply another way to ask these questions. So I have for you today a performance-based question. Let's see how you do with the performance-based question we have for you today, which is one that asks you to complete the chart. This is effectively a matching question. We have a chart that has a set of categories and a set of control types. So we have a technical, managerial, operational, and physical set of categories. And then we have control types that are preventive and another set of control types that are corrective. Now, where do we match, or which ones of these do we match with those different sides? So for those of you listening on the podcast side, this is the different categories are a technical category, a managerial category, an operational category, and a physical category. For the preventive and corrective, we're looking for you to fill in 4 different blanks for each of those in each of those categories. And I have for you, this is more of a drag and drop question. The one that I have for you are 8 different options here on the right side. They are door lock, contact authorities, backup recovery, onboarding policy, firewall, guard shack, fire extinguisher, or policy for reporting issues. Each of those should be dragged and dropped onto one of these control type examples, either on the preventive side or the corrective side, and you should put them in the right category of technical, managerial, operational, and physical. This one's a little bit harder than some that we've done before, so I'm going to give you another minute or so to look through these. So of those four categories, technical, managerial, operational, and physical, we're looking to place door lock, contact authorities, backup recovery, onboarding policy, firewall, guard shack, fire extinguisher, or policy for reporting issues. We need to be able to drag and drop these into the right place. We'll have to see. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to drag and drop anything, so I placed an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H on here, and you can simply fill in A is door lock, B is contact authority, C is backup recovery, etc. Those aren't the answers, but you get the idea. That's exactly how you should submit those in the message that we have here. So it's effectively a fill in the blank that's going on out there. I can actually, you probably can't hear it in the mic that I'm using and the setup we have here, but there's a storm outside of brewing. I can hear the thunder going on. So hopefully our internet connection will remain up and running. I'm looking at the radar and I think it might skirt around us. So we are very lucky today that we are making that happen. Let's have you answer this one. We want to fill in the blanks on this one with all 8 of those different options. Have a look at what you think the answers are for this one. Those 4 categories of technical, managerial, operational, and physical. And we want to fill in the different control types for a preventive control type and a corrective control type. We'll have to see what the differences are in being able to make that happen. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these. This is really, I think, the first video of the Security Plus series. So we'll have to see if this is one that you are familiar with. This should be pretty good. A number of you are submitting these, and of course, you could put them in the order that they are now. You can abbreviate this. This is really more for your reference when you input these and put them into this list. The important thing is that you remember what they are. See if you happen to know as you're stepping through the different options here. And this is only 2 of the different control types. I have other control types in the video. I just chose 2. Just to, I was about to say, to make it easier for you. I'm not sure that really makes it much easier when we're on this live stream, trying to figure out where to put these 8 different security controls. So obviously in the real exam, it would probably be a drag and drop, that we would drag it and drop it into the right place on this. Obviously, this is just an image on the screen that you have here. There's no drag and drop in the particular system that we are using. So we'll have to see if you can do it. Follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this is. Let's step through each one of these and see if we know what these are. See if we think we know what these are. So I want to go through this entire chart and we're going to fill in each one. We're going to drag and drop each one of these blanks and see what we can do with this. So let's begin this process. I'm going to leave the poll open on the link that's on your screen at professormesser.com/QA. If you wanted to submit those, you certainly could. Just remember what they are to be able to do it. So let's start with the very first one. In the technical category, we need a preventive control, and I would put a firewall into a preventive control type that is technical. A technical category is one that uses some type of technology to be able to provide security, and a very good security control is a firewall that can prevent traffic from flowing through your network. So that's a good one to start with, is the firewall. The technical side, we also need a corrective control type. A corrective control is one that, like the name implies, is going to correct this issue if we happen to identify it. I'm going to drag over the backup recovery as the one that we will use for this. Now, this is one, of course, that is also technical. We are backing up all of this data onto a series of backup media. Maybe it's a tape, maybe it's a drive, maybe it's a cloud-based backup, and we need to restore that to be able to recover or correct any problems that occurred with security associated with that backup control type. The next list is the managerial category. On the managerial category, we need a preventive control. Managerial controls are controls, if you think about what would your manager do to help prevent these types of security issues from occurring. So let's drag and drop an onboarding policy into that list. We can give you a list of things that you can do and cannot do, and we'll give that to you when you onboard, when you start with the organization. That's a very common preventive control type that is in the managerial category. We also have a corrective control that we need that is a managerial category. So we can put in a policy for reporting issues. If we run into a problem, we notice something is unusual, we notice that data isn't looking the way we would expect, or that something unusual is occurring in our environment with security, we need some way to get that notice back to the security team, and having a policy for that would be an important way to do that. Policies and procedures are very commonly put into the managerial category. Our next category is the operational category. Operational categories are categories where we are performing some type of operation in our organization that can, in this case, prevent problems. And a good choice in that would be a guard shack. Very often operational categories are operational controls are controls that would involve people. So a guard shack would certainly involve a person who is checking cars or checking authentication for somebody to be able to gain access to a particular part of the facility. And then as a corrective control, we need an operational control that would correct things. Perhaps having that person contact the authorities would be a good way to correct a problem. If somebody happens to get in or they notice someone who should not be there, we need to get people involved to have them trespassed off the facility, and that would be a good way to do it. Operationally, we would have a human call the authorities would show up and take care of business. So that is the corrective control in the operational category. Now, our last category is the physical category. We need a control type under the preventive list. We only have two left. What can prevent someone from gaining physical access or having some physical device that can help us with security? Well, a good option for a physical device would be a door lock. Door locks certainly prevent someone from gaining access to an area unless they have the appropriate key to be able to unlock that particular door, window, or whatever's preventing them from gaining access. And then as a corrective, well, we only have one left, right? And the one that is left is a fire extinguisher. That is a physical device, certainly. It is something that can help us at a physical level, help us prevent wildfires. So have that fire extinguisher. There aren't any wildfires in a data center, but there can certainly be electrical fires. And sometimes there are actual fires of the building. So this might be something we want to consider as the fire extinguisher or the fire suppression system that we have in place. Those are the 8 control types that we would put into this category list. So we have under the technical category, under a preventive control type would be firewall. A corrective control type would be a backup recovery. Managerial category, our onboarding policy would be preventive. Our corrective control would be the policy for reporting issues. Under the operational category, we have a guard shack to prevent any type of security issue, and we're contacting authorities as a corrective procedure. And then under the physical category, a door lock is certainly a physical control type, and that would prevent someone from gaining access. And then if we need to correct a problem, in this case a fire extinguisher certainly would apply. Well, that is our drag and drop performance-based question of the month. Hopefully, let's get you thinking about different control types, and there are other categories you need to be aware of. Make sure you go back and look at the video associated with this particular chart. There are many others that you could click on. One of the questions that came up in the chat room is, you could have gotten some of these right and some of these wrong. So there's a potential here that you could have gotten partial credit, but does CompTIA give you partial credit? Well, one of the things that they have documented in their frequently asked questions file for performance-based questions, this is really on their website, they have said very definitively that in some cases, they might give you partial credit, which means in some cases they might not, I guess. They don't tell you when they're going to do it. You have no way to determine if you got partial credit. All they've really told you is we might or we might not. I would like to think in a question like this, that we would get partial credit, but they don't have to give you partial credit. So the answer that someone said is, do I get partial credit? The answer is maybe, but we'll never know, which isn't much of an answer, but that's the best we got. We'll have to perhaps hope for the best. My particular perspective on this is don't worry about how it's graded. Worry about if you know the content. And if you know the content, it won't matter how it's graded. So that's my particular slant on that particular issue. Don't worry about the things that you have no control over. And certainly grading on this exam is something you have absolutely zero control over. Focus instead on the content and you'll do just fine. That's our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some things to think about. Now let's shift gears back to doing some multiple choice-based questions. Next on our list is this question, and it asks, a user in the accounting department can view all monthly expense reports, but they cannot change or remove any of the data. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be full disk encryption, least privilege, digital signatures, host-based firewall, or expired password? Now, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. The question again asks, a user in the accounting department can view all monthly expense reports, but they cannot change or remove any of the data. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be full disk encryption, least privilege, digital signatures, host-based firewall, or expired password? Use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to see if you know what the answers are, and the best way to do it is to lock in. A lot of people got their questions locked in fast on this one. I wonder if this is the one where if we are looking at this particular question and this particular problem, whenever we get everyone sort of answering very quickly on what it would be, that this is one where I really think that we either really, really know it or we really, really don't. So we'll have to figure out if this is one of those cases. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a user in the accounting department can view all monthly expense reports, but they cannot change or remove any of the data. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be full disk encryption, least privilege, digital signatures, host-based firewall, or expired password? We'll stop our poll and we'll see the answer. 98% of you, very strong, say the answer is least privilege is what we would be working through. And indeed, in this case, that's pretty solid that it would be that particular situation. One of the things that you start to see when you're working in a world of IT security is we want to give people the right type of access and the right type of permissions for the job that they're doing. We do not want to give somebody more access than they are entitled to. This would cause a number of problems, of course. If everybody had admin access, then everybody could look at all data from everywhere in the network all the time. They could go to any share drive. They could look at any data. They could go through personnel files. They could go through accounting information. They could look at inventory details, even if their job had nothing to do with payroll, accounting, or inventory. So that's obviously a concern. Having someone have full control over looking at everything is obviously a concern. The other part that's a concern is what happens when an attacker gains access to a particular user account. If that user account has full access to every system, then the attacker now has full access to every system. And that's not what we would like either. That would also apply to any malware, any ransomware, or anything that might be malicious on the network, which is why least privilege is an important type of security consideration, especially in an environment where there is very high security. We want to give people exactly the right amount of control and access. And indeed, in this particular case, if somebody has access to a certain type of data, but doesn't have access to other types of data, it's probably the case that somebody has correctly configured least privilege for that user. And whoever did that in their security environment did a good job, because that's exactly the way that it's supposed to work. Let's do some more questions. Next on our list is this multiple choice question that asks, a security team has just installed a new WAF. which of the following would be the most likely use for this WAF? Should be a good one to go through. Let's see if it's one of these possible answers of manage encrypted tunnels, securely store web server certificates, maintain uptime during a power outage, block web-based application attacks, or check a system for compliance. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're instead going to pretend we are taking the exam and we are answering this question in the online answer following the link that you see on your screen at professormesser.com/QA. It's got to be one of these, right? Let's see how well you do with this one. Again, the question asks, a security team has just installed a new WAF. Which of the following would be the most likely use for this WAF? Would be to manage encrypted tunnels, securely store web server certificates, maintain uptime during a power outage, block web-based application attacks, or check a system for compliance. Now, if you think you know the answer, and of course, when we work with security, we work with a number of different things. This is one of those things. But why would we deploy this? Why would we install this to be able to work through it? See if you happen to know the answer by locking it in. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A number of you have already put that answer in. This one went a little bit slower than last time, I think. So I wonder how the answers be. I haven't looked at the answers on my screen. I haven't given myself any hints of what's going on. So we're going to figure this out in just a moment. Again, the question asks, a security team has just installed a new WAF. Which of the following would be the most likely use for this WAF? Would it be to manage encrypted tunnels, securely store web server certificates, maintain uptime during a power outage, block web-based application attacks, or check a system for compliance? What do we think the answer is? Is it another gimme, or did we maybe go the wrong direction on this one? Because this says 92% of you say it's to block web-based application attacks. But is that really the case? Is that what we would really do with a WAF? WAF stands for, of course, a web application firewall. This is not the firewall that you most commonly think about when you say the word firewall, which has traditionally been a device that allows or blocks traffic based on a traffic flow that's commonly associated with an IP address, a port number, or in many cases on modern firewalls, an application. But there's another type of firewall that goes a little bit deeper into the application data itself, and that would be a web application firewall, where it's looking to see what type of application traffic is being submitted. Is someone trying to perform some type of security attack against this application? Things like SQL injection is a good example of this. WAFs are very commonly used to be able to stop SQL injection. Normal firewalls don't typically look for unknown SQL injections, but WAFs are very good at finding situations where someone is trying to perform a SQL injection. So that's another good example of where a WAF might be used. And in this case, I think blocking a web-based application attack is the one that fits best in this particular question. Managing encrypted tunnels is not a perspective of a WAF. WAF's very unusual for a WAF to be involved in an encrypted tunnel configuration. That's usually best served by a next generation firewall, the traditional firewalls that we have, or a standalone VPN concentrator. Securely storing web server certificates. There's lots of ways to do this, but HSMs are very commonly used for that. We've got maintaining uptime during a power outage. That's something you might apply towards a UPS, not towards a WAF. And then checking a system for compliance can be done with either our own compliance system, especially made compliance software, or with perhaps some type of intrusion detection software or some type of scanning device. So there's different ways to check a system for compliance. But in this case, the one that fits the best is the one that most of you chose. Indeed, that's the one that you selected, block web-based application attacks. And you would be absolutely correct. That's what we would do with this particular problem. Well, as we've already seen, we've gone through looking at security controls. We've talked about a WAF. We've gone through a number of different security descriptions of different topics. And as you can see, the Security Plus exam is a very broad exam. It covers everything from the security controls, encryption types, being able to understand how to design and set up your security policies, understanding how you would manage risk management and mobile devices, and so much more. So one of the things that I've done is I've taken everything that's in every one of my videos and I put them into a single document. These are my course notes. My course notes are designed to give you a summary of every video so that if you wanted, for example, there's the security control chart right here at the top. You've got all of the different text, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables. I've taken everything that you need to have in one single place as a summary, so that after you are done watching these videos, you have a set of notes that is the most comprehensive set of notes you're going to find for Security Plus. These are my course notes. They're available not just in the PDF form that you just saw, there's also a physical form as well. It's obviously exactly the same as the PDF version, but it's one that you can take around and you now have a physical book that you can carry around with you. The physical book itself is one that provides you not only with the physical piece that I will mail to you, but when you purchase the physical edition, you also get the digital PDF for free, which certainly helps as well. So if you wanted to have some centralized form of notes that can step you either through every video as you're watching or have some set of notes that are available after you've watched the videos, this is a great way to do it. Go to professormesser.com/701CN, or certainly you could go to the website and just choose the course notes from the menus under the Security Plus group. And we do ship anywhere in the world if you wanted to get the physical edition. And of course, the digital edition can be downloaded from anywhere in the world, so you have different options. Let's do some more questions though. Let's get through these next set of questions that I have for you. Next on our list is this question that asks, a security administrator has received a notification that an email containing credit card numbers has been blocked before it was sent. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this notification? Would that have come from a FIM, pressure sensors, proxy, IPS, or DLP? It's got to be one of these, right? Now, if you think you know the answer, we have links for you right here. Please go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. The question again asks, a security administrator has received a notification that an email containing credit card numbers has been blocked before it was sent. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this notification? Would it be FIM, pressure sensors, proxy, IPS, or DLP? Do you think you know the answer? Use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's got to be one of these, right? A lot of people locking in their answers very quickly on this one. So I'm encouraged. I think we might know this one. Hopefully we're familiar with this process. I have a story about this process in just a moment that I will tell you. I don't want to give too much away. There's a story. There's always a story. But we'll talk about this in a moment. This is one that you will certainly run into in your world of IT security. This is also something that is important to know. All of these answers, by the way, are from the exam objectives. So if there's one of these answers you don't recognize, maybe there's an abbreviation you don't recognize, or you don't understand how you would use that particular technology, please make a note of it, because you'll want to go back to your exam objectives and study a little bit more on what those happen to be. So hopefully you're familiar with what these are. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a security administrator has received a notification that an email containing credit card numbers has been blocked before it was sent. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this notification? Is it a FIM, pressure sensors, proxy, IPS, or DLP? We're stopping the poll, and your answers not quite as strong as our previous answers, is it? Although still 61% is pretty strong. 61% say it's a DLP is what you would use. However, 18% say it's an IPS is what you would choose. And then 14% say the answer is a FIM, F-I-M. We also have proxy at 4%. Not many people choosing that one. And even less at 1%, pressure sensors. Pressure sensors, which are not maybe what you think they are. But in this particular case, 61% of you chose DLP. So if we're talking about abbreviations, that's an important one to know. DLP stands for Data Loss Prevention. That is the term that is specific to this particular function that is able to look for information that is sensitive. Things like social security numbers, credit card numbers, medical records, and other things that would be considered sensitive that you would not want other people to be able to see. Now, these things are sometimes sent around the network or even emailed out of your network, and that may not be what you would like. You may want that sensitive information to stay private, stay confidential within your organization. And so we want to stop that data from being emailed, from being sent around the network, and we want to be sure nobody can see this information. We want to block it before it goes out. And we can do that by using a data loss prevention solution. This is commonly software that's either software running on a system, or it could also be a device that is on your network. That is a purpose-built device, that is a data loss prevention appliance, or it could be DLP functionality that's built into an existing next-generation firewall, for example. Generally, the next-generation firewall version of DLP is one that is not quite as robust or have as many features as perhaps a standalone DLP, but still can look for things like credit card numbers and social security numbers and identify them and block them. So DLP was the answer that we were looking for. 61% of you chose that one. That is correct. Now, say 18% of you said IPS, an intrusion prevention system. And IPS is a great way to allow or disallow the traffic going through the network, and it will block known vulnerabilities. It will block things that it knows about. But an IPS generally is really a signature-based function. It really does not have much capability beyond that. And somebody who's emailing out credit card numbers, social security numbers is not a fixed signature. It's something very randomized. It's not something the IPS already knows about. So IPS would not be our best, or in this case, most likely source of this notification. We also have a FIM. FIMs are designed to look at files that are on your system. And if somebody modifies that file, it will let you know the file has been modified. This is great for files that should never change. Things like your core operating system files, things like configuration files. You can have your file integrity management utility look for that data. And if anything changes with that, it will tell you. It will alarm, it will alert, or may even block it from being changed. So that integrity monitoring can be really, really useful, but it has nothing to do with credit card numbers being blocked before they were sent. We also have a proxy. Proxies are great for making requests on our behalf or others' behalf. In this case, a proxy is not something that would commonly block credit card numbers before it was sent. There are some proxies out there that have some DLP functionality in them, but not every proxy does. Therefore, in this particular case of 5 options, that would not be the most likely because you have the option of a DLP, which is the most likely source of this particular alert. And then lastly, pressure sensors. These are devices that can physically identify when something is putting pressure on them. It might be pressure sensors in a window for window breakage. It might be a pressure sensor on the floor. Somebody walks by, but these are not commonly associated with an alarm system and not blocking an email containing credit card numbers. In this case, DLP is absolutely the answer we were looking for. And 61% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done on that one. So let's do some more. I've got another question that we can step through. Next question on our list is this one, and it asks, a service provider has created a list of tasks to be completed for an upcoming server installation. Which of the following would best describe this list? Would it be MSA, MOU, SOW, SLA, or NDA? It's all 3-letter acronyms. It's all acronyms all day. A service provider has created a list of tasks to be completed for an upcoming server installation. Which of the following would best describe this list? Is it MSA, MOU, SOW, SLA, or NDA? It's got to be one of these, right? I wouldn't be asking you if it wasn't in the exam objectives. The chat room is not happy with me with my choice of these three-letter acronyms, four-letter acronyms all day, every day. We're doing a bunch of acronyms, and we have to know what they all are. By the way, all of these acronyms are real acronyms. These are all from the exam objectives. So again, if you don't recognize MSA, MOU, SOW, SLA, or NDA, make sure you make a note of that to go back and study up a little bit more on what these acronyms might be. We'll have to see what they are. And I look forward to you telling me that you've got it now. You've figured out the acronyms. We've stepped through all of them. I have to remember what they are too. This will be what I do next, as we kind of go through each one of these to try to figure out how we would apply that particular technology into the world of security. Should be a good one to break this down. Fortunately, I think I've documented pretty much all of these in the answer so that we can really go through and focus on them. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a service provider has created a list of tasks to be completed for an upcoming server installation. Which of the following would best describe this list? Would it be MSA, MOU, SOW, SLA, or NDA? Closing the poll. Let's see what you chose. 58%, if we go with the majority, say the answer is SOW. We also have 25%, a quarter of you say the answer is SLA. 10% say the answer is MSA, and 5% say the answer is MOU. Almost nobody, less than 1%, say the answer is NDA. So this becomes a little bit more of a challenge if you're someone who's trying to work through the details of these different agreements that you could use. Let's first look at the very first one at the top, the MSA. That's a master service agreement. Usually this is one that when you're starting up a relationship with a service provider, you use a master service agreement to determine what is the overall scope of services that we will provide to you. Maybe it gives you an overall cost that you can apply to any of the services that you'll do. Maybe it's a set of broad frameworks so everyone knows the processes and procedures for having work done. And then you can use that master service agreement to apply towards many different tasks that need to be done, many different services that can be done by the company. So you don't have to rewrite the contract every single time you want to do a service. Instead, you can refer back to the master service agreement, and then you just tell me what you need done, and we'll bill you based on the terms of the agreement that everybody has agreed to. Those terms, those things that need to be done, that list of very important things that we need to focus on, is either referred to as a work order or a statement of work, SOW. Statement of work is probably the more common one that we tend to see. A statement of work, a SAL, an SOW. This is one where we are listing out in detail. Now that we have a master service agreement, what do we need to have you do? Well, we need to have you perform a firewall migration. We're moving from one manufacturer's firewall to another. So we need you to audit the list of existing firewall rules, determine how those firewall rules should be written in the new firewall, implement those firewall rules, monitor them for a week, and at the end of the week, create a report that shows that all of those rules are working as expected. So there's your 5 steps in your statement of work. It allows someone at the end of the task or the end of the service to say, have I finished this task? Have I completed it to your satisfaction? Yes, you did all 5 of the things that we listed in our statement of work. And if somebody shows up and goes, well, you didn't do this 6th thing, you could say, that's not part of the statement of work. You still need to pay me because we didn't do statement of work with that one. And in that particular case, statement of work is exactly what we were looking to do. We needed a list of tasks. We needed to verify those tasks would be done, and statement of work in conjunction with the master service agreement is what we are looking for. A memorandum of understanding is an MOU. It's a very broad statement of organizations that perhaps are looking forward to working with each other in the future, but it is not something that is a detailed list of tasks. So an MOU would not apply here. A service level agreement defines how well the service should be done. This is commonly done with service providers where there is a specific metric. So for example, you may expect that your internet service provider provides you with 99.999% uptime for an entire 12-month period. And you can hold them to that. And if they don't provide, or they provide you with less than 99.999% uptime, there might be a set of guidelines to follow in that case. Maybe you get some money back. Maybe they give you a credit towards your system. There's a number of different ways to apply that, but service level agreements are a way to define what service is good and what service would not be good. And that would not apply in this case. We're looking for a list of tasks to be able to make that happen. And then lastly, we have a non-disclosure agreement. This is a contract that one or more individuals would sign that would where they would agree not to disclose the information that was covered as part of a presentation, a meeting, or anything else that is defined within the non-disclosure agreement. In this case, when we have a list of tasks that need to be completed and we want to be able to refer to those tasks to perform those services, then we have a statement of work, an SOW, and 58% of you got that one absolutely correct. For those of you looking for a list of these acronyms and wondering how many of these acronyms do I need to know, there's a big list in the back of the CompTIA exam objectives. We'll talk more about those objectives in just a bit. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you an email that verifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. It's a continuing education unit. If you are looking for that CEU, you need to follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click the button that says Contact Us. There's a link on that screen that says Contact Us. It'll bring up a form. Put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2024 Security Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, MSA SOW. Those are the two things you need to put into that message that lets me know that you were here to watch this particular event. And then you can send it to me right away. You don't have to put anything else in there. But if you do put anything else in there, I do read through every single one of those. It's always nice to get an update on what people are working on. So if you want to put in what you're working towards when you're planning to take your exam, I love to read through all that as well. You don't have to put anything if you don't want to, though. Simply put in MSA SOW and send that message to me. Again, make sure you follow the process. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put August 2024 Security Plus. And then on the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, or code words, MSA SOW. That's what we need to put in there. And that way I know that you were watching this as well. So that way you have to follow those instructions. If you don't follow those instructions, you also don't get the email. So make sure you follow those instructions. You can't just send me an email blindly asking for this. You have to know that that's the process we follow. It's all part of watching. If you weren't here to watch, you wouldn't know. So that's the idea. And I'd love to be able to send you that email. It takes me about a week to turn those around, and we'll get that back to you as soon as possible. Let's do some more questions, right? Let's do some more on this list. Our next question is this one that asks, which of the following would best describe data masking? Would that be hashing, key exchange, obfuscation, encryption, or salting? Which of the following would best describe data masking? Would that be hashing, key exchange, obfuscation, encryption, or salting? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link on your screen to lock in your answer. That would be professormesser.com/QA. I have to see if you know what these happen to be. This would be a good one to step through. I think many of us might even know what these things are, but you, of course, also need to know how they're applied. And I think that's one of the things this question does very well, is kind of give you two steps to be able to get to what the final answer might be. That's very common on the exam, that they don't give you direct questions. You'll never get a question that asks, what does the abbreviation MOU stand for? You'll never get anything like that. Memorandum of Understanding. Well, I know what that is. It's Memorandum of Understanding. MOU. Remember, it's like a flashcard. They never give you flashcard questions on the exam. You never get trivia questions on the exam like that. Instead, they're asking you questions like this where you have to know what the answer is, and then you have to know how to apply that answer. And that's the important part, I think, as you study for this exam. It's never or almost never a straightforward question and answer. It's always one where there are multiple steps involved to be able to make that happen. A lot of people getting their answers in on this one. So let's see how you did. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe data masking? Would that be hashing, key exchange, obfuscation, encryption, or salting? It's got to be one of these, right? But what did you choose? Well, that's a good question. Let's find out what you chose. 62% say obfuscation, 19% say hashing, 12% say encryption, and then 5% say salting. Almost nobody, less than 1%, say key exchange was what this is. Well, let's talk about data masking. You've probably even seen this. If you have any receipts anywhere nearby you could grab, the receipt itself has probably a list of the things you purchased and the costs of those, and shows you the total, how much tax you paid, the normal things you'd have on a receipt. And if you paid with a credit card, or you paid with Apple Pay, which is a type of credit card, it will list out the card. But you'll notice on your receipt that it never puts the whole card number there, at least not anymore. Yes, they used to put the entire card number and everything on the receipt. It's no longer on the receipt. Instead, maybe the best you would get are the last 4 digits of the card that was used for this particular transaction. But you'll notice the rest of the numbers on the credit card are hidden from you. They are masked from you. It's a mask. They have masked these numbers from you. And it's a way to obfuscate the numbers that are there. They make it so that it's not easy to know what these happen to be. And so if you are trying to hide some of this data, then this is a great way to hide it kind of in plain sight, because you can see there are numbers there, but you have no idea what numbers they happen to be because they've been replaced with an asterisk. This will protect your credit card numbers. Sometimes if you're looking at something with sometimes I have sites with login names. They obfuscate, they mask my login name. Or if I'm trying to reset a password, they'll say, oh, does your email start with J asterisk, 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 at asterisk, 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 er.com? Like, well, I think so. You've basically given me 3 letters. I guess my email address is one of those 3 letters in it. Sure. That is exactly what it can do. So it can protect some of the personally identifiable information, or PII. And it hides it so that nobody knows what that number happens to be. That is data masking. And it is a way to obfuscate what happens to be there. So the 62% of you that chose obfuscation got that one absolutely correct. And you'll notice in that example that the number, or at least part of the number, is still there. We know that this credit card number ends in 2512, or debit number ends in 2512. So it's not really hashing the data. Hashing the data would certainly be a way to change the way the data looks. But in this case, we are masking it. So we're not hashing it. We're not changing the data. We're simply hiding some of it. So hashing would not be an applicable answer. We are also not encrypting the data, which would absolutely change all of the data. We would have no idea what the data happened to be. We certainly wouldn't see the last 4 digits of that number. So it would not be encryption in this case either. It would also not be salting. Salting is often used in conjunction with hashing to make the hash a little more difficult to reverse engineer or brute force. So it would not be salting either. And then key exchange. This has nothing to do with a key exchange process like Diffie-Hellman or many of the other key exchange processes you would run into. Key exchange in this case and data masking, those are 2 very different technologies. So data masking and key exchange do not go together. In this case, the thing that does go together is indeed obfuscation. 62% of you chose that one, and you got it absolutely correct. That is the right answer. Well done. Well, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but I have another question for you that I'd like to go through. This next question, though, is not one that I wrote specifically for this study group. It's instead one that's from my practice exams book. You may not have even seen this. It's my book that has 3 separate 90-question practice exams inside of it. We have both performance-based questions and multiple choice-based questions in this book. This is a book that I wrote every single one of these questions from scratch so that you would have the best possible representation of what an actual exam question would feel like. This is something you can't do by simply just throwing questions together or running them through some ridiculous AI contraption. This is something that has been specifically written to be able to give you the best possible exam experience without actually taking the exam. So the questions have a similar feel, they have a similar tone to what you will find on the exam, and that is by design. So hopefully that's something that you have run into, something you're familiar with is these practice exams. If you haven't, we're about to do one. And as I mentioned, there are 3 separate sets in here. You can, of course, get this in a PDF format or the physical format that you see here. And when you get them together with both the practice exams and the course notes, then you get a little bit of a discount off of those as well. Something else you can see on the website. Let's do a question that I have from my practice exams. I'm going to bring up the practice exams PDF right here. Here it is. Question, this is on page 16 of my 701 practice exams, question A45. And the question asks, a data breach has occurred in a large insurance company. A security administrator is building new servers and security systems to get all the financial systems back online. Which part of the incident response process would best describe these actions? Would that be lessons learned, containment, recovery, or analysis? It's going to be one of those 4. Now, this is a PDF, so if you wanted to annotate any of this, you could certainly do that. If you have a stylus, you could write on your screen and make some changes to this as well. You've got different options available to be able to work through these. And another thing that you can do is part of this PDF, you'll notice that the answers that are in here are answers that are on page 33. If you just want to know, is it A, B, C, or D, you can do that. It's on page 33 to be able to work through it. But the other thing that's interesting is if you want a detailed answer, it's on page 83, which is even more complicated. We're only on page 16. But instead of just scrolling through this, one of the things that we have available are links built into the PDF itself. So what we're going to do is click on where it says the details, and it's going to take us, I should go out of annotation mode, the details, and it goes to page 83. Click just like that. And right at the top of page 83, it has what the question happens to be. And you can see with the same question with the same answers here. And then it tells you that the correct answer is indeed C, recovery. That's the answer that we were looking for on this one. And this is one that is useful because we also give an explanation of why that is the right answer. That's something you commonly see on practice exams. So it tells you why it's the right practice exam and working through it. But we also have every wrong answer listed here, and we tell you why every wrong answer is wrong. And I think that's an important part because when I'm taking these exams and I get it wrong, I want to know why I got it wrong. How am I supposed to learn from this? How am I supposed to prepare myself for this exam if I don't understand why I got a wrong answer wrong? So every single wrong answer in this book has an explanation on why that is a wrong answer. So absolutely have a look at those. Even if you get the answer right, I highly recommend you look at the wrong answer because all wrong answers are also from the exam objectives, something you need to know and be able to work through them. Also, I have in this list at the very bottom, if you didn't understand the question and you didn't understand any of the answers, you could watch the video that was created that this question is based on. So very, very useful to go back and watch the incident response video, which is on the SY0-701 Objective 4.8. You can either use your QR code reader, probably the camera that's on your mobile device, or if you're looking at this on a computer, each one of these links is also a hot link directly to that particular video. And of course, when you're done with this, most PDF readers have a back button. I'll click the back button and we're back to where we started and go to the next question that's on this list. Those are my practice exams. And if this is something you think might help you, I would highly recommend you head over and get a copy of these on my website. You can find them at professormesser.com/securitype, and help you prepare a little bit better for the exams that you might run into. Maybe it might be something that can help you if you indeed are planning to take your Security Plus exam anytime soon. I've mentioned throughout this study group that there is a set of objectives somewhere out that you could grab to be able to tell you what all these abbreviations are, what these different expectations are when you walk into the exam room. What are they going to ask of you? What topics do you need to know? What is the distribution of topics? How deep should we go into these different areas? Well, I've given you some view of that in my video series, but if you wanted to look at what CompTIA tells you directly, I would highly recommend you download these. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, or simply go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. You'll find a document like this one that lists out for you every single bullet you need to know for the entire exam. So before you walk into the exam room, before you book your exam, you might want to use this as a checklist. It will help you understand exactly what you need to know when you walk into that exam room. It's going to be extremely important that you're prepared. This will prepare you. And if you go through this list and you realize, well, wait, I don't really understand the roles and responsibilities for owners, controllers, processors, or custodians/stewards, this would be a good thing to make a circle around it, to check it, to go back and study that one a little bit more. And of course, all of the numbers that are in here, so 5.1 for that particular section correlates back to section 5.1 of my videos, and should be relatively easy to find the video that covers that particular topic. Those are the exam objectives, and they're free. Absolutely free for you to download. They're provided by CompTIA. Not all certification bodies provide this level of detail. So you should absolutely take advantage of this. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. AWS, Amazon doesn't do this. A lot of people don't do this. So make sure you use this. This gives you a lot more information, and it gives you a lot more of an advantage than anybody else out there when it comes to taking your certification exam. Make sure you use that. And of course, you can find it at professormesser.com/objectives, and it's free. Make sure you get your hands on that. We do one of these study groups every month for each of these courses that we do. We do 2 A pluses and 1 Network Plus and 1 Security Plus. Our next Security Plus study group is on September the 25th. So in about a month, just under. And we'll be back with a whole new set of questions and a whole new set of things we can talk about during that study group. But of course, we have other study groups that are occurring also throughout the month. A good example is one that's a little bit different. Normally, Security Plus is our last study group of the month. But in this particular month, we have another study group that was rescheduled. Our Network Plus study group is tomorrow. So if you are someone who's studying for your Network Plus, or you just want to come back and try your hand at some Network Plus topics, we will be here tomorrow again at 12 noon Eastern time, and we'll do our Network Plus study group, which of course has a whole new set of questions for Network Plus written just for that particular study group. Coming back tomorrow for that. And of course, you can see we've got A Plus on the 10th and 12th of September, Network Plus again on the 18th of September. And of course, our next study group for Security Plus is on September the 25th. These dates can change. Sometimes, this good example is this month where the dates changed multiple times. And I do apologize for that, but chaos is chaos. The only thing we can really do is move the schedule around, but I always update the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. I also always immediately update the calendar that is on our Discord. So if you're someone who's trying to find the best way to get to those, make sure you have a look at those calendars. Well, we're not done yet, although we're finished with me asking you the question. Maybe in this particular case, you can ask me some questions next. Absolutely do that. Go to professormesser.com and /QA and submit those questions. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. We can certainly focus on what the different options might be for any of these. So hopefully that will give you a few options to choose from. Don't forget about our weekly pop quiz questions for Security Plus on the service formerly known as Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. We also have Instagram questions, professormesser.com/Instagram. And don't forget, if you really want to give us a thumbs up, you want to subscribe to our channel, this is a great place to do it. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube, and you can do that as well. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. Why would you pay full price at the CompTIA website when you can get them for a discount at professormesser.com/vouchers, another good place to go. And of course, we have our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more on our website. Follow the links on the main menus, or simply go to professormesser.com/701SB for our 701 Success Bundle. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but don't worry, there's so much more to come. Stick around for the after show where you can ask me questions. I'll explain how all that works in just a moment. Stick around for that. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's take a sip of whatever this is. Much better. Might be able to talk now. Let's now do some more questions, but in this case, you're going to ask me questions. This is the part where there's no preparing for this one. This one is going to be me getting questions from you, and we'll have to see how this goes. If you would like to submit a question, you can, of course, do that at any time right here, following the link on your screen. It's the same link we've been using this whole time. Go to professormesser.com/QA. There's a tab across the top where you can submit questions. They will go into a pool that I have on this side. I'll be able to skim through them. We'll be able to see what questions you happen to have there, and then I can publish those questions. So you may not see it pop up on the screen immediately, but it is in my list now. We'll be looking through these as we go through this list. I mentioned earlier there was a story about DLP, and I'll tell you how this story turned out. I was working for a next generation firewall company as a systems engineer. We went to visit a potential customer. We were demonstrating our technologies to them, and I connected up, I configured the firewall. We connected it to their systems. We plugged it into their network, and we went to lunch. When we came back from lunch, there was, data that had gone through over the past hour or hour and a half. And so we started looking through the alarms and alerts that were in this particular firewall. And one of the things we noticed was very unusual for this to happen, but we always configure some DLP alarms, just default alarms. If you see a credit card number, block it. If you see a social security number, block it. Just some very generic DLP-like alarms available in our firewall. And I just turned those on by default as part of the demonstration, but it had fired on one of them that was credit cards. And so we went back and looked at the logs, and it had identified a file transfer. It was an email that was sent out, and in the email was an attachment. In the attachment was a Microsoft Excel file. Now, as many of you know, in the latest versions of Microsoft Excel, the files themselves are compressed. They are the XLS Zs. They are it's not a Z at the end, but they are zipped effectively. If you were to look at your Word documents, your PowerPoint documents, your Excel documents, they're effectively zipped up. You can unzip them. In fact, if you have an unzip utility, you can unzip them. They are effectively zip files. So the firewall had unzipped that as it was coming through, and inside of the Excel file, it had identified credit card numbers. Now, as many of you know, credit card numbers are not just a random set of numbers. They look like a random set of numbers, but they really aren't. There's a specific checksum and a format that is associated with each type of credit card number. MasterCard numbers have their own checksum that is used. Visa cards, American Express cards, they have their own format. And you may have noticed this if you ever start typing in a credit card number online, you'll notice halfway through typing it in, it figures out what credit card number you're using. Well, it's able to do that because the number that you've typed in could only be that particular card type. And you can't put in just a random set of numbers. That does not necessarily calculate out to be a legitimate card number. So this is an example of this alarm that came up. We said, whoa, this is interesting, because we rarely see credit card numbers being sent in the clear over the network. And in fact, zipped up is effectively in the clear. There's no encryption or any type of protection there. And it turns out this was a manufacturing facility, without giving too much away. And what they had multiple manufacturing locations. Orders were done at one site, and those orders were emailed off to the manufacturing locations. So what we were seeing was an email that was coming in with all of the orders of what needed to be created at the manufacturing plant, with all of the purchase information associated with every single one of them, all in the clear over the corporate network. Now, fortunately, this was not information that was going out to the internet, but of course, you probably shouldn't be sending people's credit card numbers through the network without any other type of protections involved in them. And in this particular case, it was sort of unnecessary. You don't need to know someone's credit card number to know that you need to produce that particular product. So we effectively identified a security vulnerability, a security concern for that particular customer as part of that evaluation. And that's just another example of how a DLP could really help out sometimes in preventing bigger problems from happening. And it's another example of how DLPs are used in a more practical sense on people's networks. So if you're ever wondering any more about data loss prevention, there's a good example of DLP actually occurring in the wild and what you would expect to see if DLP happened to fire. Okay, let's look at questions that you have sent to me. I put this link on the screen so that you can ask me some questions. There are a number of questions that you've put into this list already. And this is one where I think we should probably start at the top, work our way through, and you're welcome to ask anything. These questions can be about technology, they can be about certifications, or they could be really about anything else. If you want to ask about the weather, I guess you could. We could certainly look at that if you wanted to, but this is a good example of where we can go with these. So let's go through this. Some of these I may have already answered, but I think it's useful to kind of step through them. In fact, this is one that I sort of answered, but not really. This is from Tina, who asks, there's a list of acronyms on the exam objectives. Are some questions impossible to understand without knowing them? I think we know the answer to this. Thank you, Professor. I recommend everyone take the notes in the practice exams. Well, thank you first, Tina, for that qualification of the course notes and practice exams. But your point about the acronyms is a good one. So why don't we look at acronyms? Let's flip over to the acronym list. Here is the exam objectives. You recall us talking about this earlier. There they are. And I'm just going to scroll all the way to the back of the exam objectives. There's a section in the back that is the CompTIA Security Plus 701 acronym list. Now, I'm going to say that most of the acronyms in this list, and it's multiple pages of these, by the way. Look at all these acronyms. Wait, there's more. There's the last bit. So there's the last set. So it's how many pages? It's page 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 pages of acronyms. There's a lot of acronyms here. We do acronyms really well in this industry. Trust me. And for the most part, these acronyms are pretty good. Let's look at some of them. For example, the first acronym is AAA. Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. That's a very common acronym we use all the time. In fact, and this is sort of the problem we have for people that have worked in the industry a long time, like I have. I've maybe too long, right? So the thing we run into is we often ask, well, do you have a AAA server? Hey, what's your AAA configuration? What's the IP address of your AAA server? We almost forget their words associated with that thing. And we never use the words. We'll never say, oh, what's the IP address of your authentication, authorization, and accounting server? We never say that. There's a reason we have these acronyms, so we don't have to say that. So we often forget what the words are in practical use. We have to think about it ourselves. But what you will not get on the exam, and I mentioned this earlier, you will not get a question that says, what does the acronym AAA stand for? Is it, and go through a lot of different scenarios. Is it authentication, authorization, and accounting? You're never going to get a question like this. Instead, they're going to ask something around what a AAA server does. An analyst is installing a AAA server. Why are they doing this? And then you have to decide, well, why are they doing this? Is it to encrypt data? Is it to protect certificates? Is it to provide additional login processes? Is it to do that? There's all these things that you can do. So you have to know not just what AAA stands for, but you have to understand, what do you do with that? So I would tell you, for those of you that are creating flashcards of all of these acronyms, don't just put the acronym and the spelled out version of this. Make sure you also put on that list what it does, how it works, how it would be implemented, when you would use this, because that's really what they're going to ask you. That's really the important part of this. So make sure you're familiar with that. Not all of these acronyms tend to show up all the time. For example, some of these acronyms I think are a little outdated. For example, I think the adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge, the attack frameworks, I don't think any of the frameworks are in the 701 exam, but the acronym for the framework is still in here from the 601 side. So this is a good example of where some of these acronyms may not necessarily be as important as others, because I don't think that's even in the exam objectives, that particular acronym. Some others in here like ASLR. You talking about a camera? No, I'm talking about address space layout randomization. I don't even recall talking about that as part of any exam objectives. So you may see some acronyms in here that don't necessarily correlate directly back to an exam objective. They put it in here for some reason, but I doubt you're going to see that appear on an exam if it doesn't also appear in the set of exam objectives. So use this as a great list. I would say 98 or 99% of this list is perfect to study from, but not everything in this list. So if you run across one, you're thinking, where'd that come from? I don't recall seeing that anywhere. That very well may be the case, and you could probably discount that one just a little bit, if not completely, from your list of things you need to know. So I would agree, the acronym list, there will be questions on your exam, very similar to the ones I did today, where the answer is all acronyms. So if you don't know the acronyms, you can't answer the question, or at least not well. So I think that's pretty important to know. You should absolutely keep that in mind, that there could be an answer or set of answers that's all acronyms and you have to decipher them. We had one early. We had one question earlier. I don't have it up on my screen now. That was all acronyms. It was one of the last ones we did. If I go to my polls, it was the one that was a service provider creating tasks to be completed for an upcoming service installation. And was it an MSA, an MOU, an SOW, an SLA, or an NDA? So which was it? I think I have it on the screen here. So which one of it was that? It was these. So every single one of the answers was an acronym. Not uncommon. Not uncommon to run into that. So make sure that that is something you think about or work through as you think about these different acronyms. Make sure you're not only familiar with what the name is, but make sure you're also familiar with how does that work? What is that that we would be working with? How does that technology fit into the world of IT? You need to know those things as well. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. So here is, this is a good question. We'll go with Tino again. Tino, you got some good questions here. The question asks, from multiple answer questions, we don't know a lot of these on the exam. You don't get a lot of multiple answer questions on the exam, but there are some where they would say, here's a question, pick the two answers that are the best answers here. Pick two. They will always tell you how many you need to choose. It's not choose all that apply. You'll never get one of those. You'll always get choose two answers from this. And then you have to choose those two. And in fact, it will tell you if you don't choose two. If you just choose one, it tells you didn't choose two. Tino asks, if we know one of the two questions, is it better to guess the second or leave it empty? We don't know. We believe it's always best to answer every single question. That is the general belief on the exam. What the prevailing thought is on an exam is that if you answer the question correct, you get points. If you don't answer the question at all, you get no points. If you answer the question wrong, you get no points. So effectively, leaving the answer blank and getting the answer wrong are effectively the same problem. There's no points. That's also really good though, because if you get the answer wrong, they don't take points away from you that you've already earned. So you're not penalized for guessing. Think of it that way. You should always guess. That is the overwhelming belief, and I really do believe that's the case, is that anything that is a answer one question, answer multiple questions, anything that asks you a question, answer it. Put in some type of answer for multiple choice. They should always never submit your exam with a blank multiple choice answer. You're just, that was a wasted chance of getting an answer right, even guessing and getting an answer right. Never leave them blank. So my best option for you, the best practice for you, is to always answer the question. Never, never, never leave it blank. It's going to be important as we step through it. Let's do some more questions from your list. Let's see what some folks were asking where you can get the acronyms from. Now you know. So now you know where the acronyms are in the list. Chris asks, hey, is 6 months too long to study? I don't know if there's a too long, quite honestly. This is probably one of the most frequently asked questions we get, which is, how long should I study for this exam? How long should I study? Should I study for a month? Should I study for a week? Should I study for 3 months? Should I study for 6 months? How long should I study? And I don't have an answer for you, because everybody studies a different amount. Some people walk into this exam with a predefined knowledge in the industry. Maybe they've been working in IT for a long time, and now they've been told you need to get your Security Plus certification. And they're already familiar with a lot of these technologies. Maybe they've already installed a firewall. Maybe they know everything there is to know about setting up an IPsec tunnel, and they're already familiar with the background of a lot of these topics. They could probably study pretty quick and take that exam. Then you might get someone like me who maybe I want to study for this exam, but I really want to know the topics really well, and I really have a limited amount of time during the day to study. On average, I would say most people can get through this exam in about 2 to 3 months. But for someone like me who really doesn't have the time and really has to spend a lot of time diving into the details of this, it could take me 6 months to study for this exam, and that would be perfectly normal. So don't worry so much on how much time it is supposed to take you, because everybody has a different amount of time. And the amount of time it will take you will be very unique to your knowledge and how fast you can study. I think using the exam objectives is a great barometer. So let's take a look at the exam objectives, for example. Here they are. So for instance, section 1.0, general security concepts. 1.1 is compare and contrast various types of security controls. In fact, we remember this from our earlier performance-based question. The different categories of technical, managerial, operational, and physical, and the different control types of preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating, and directive. So those are things that we need to know. And we probably should study them and be familiar with these topics and be able to fill in boxes and look at the video and what I chose as some of these, so that you now know these topics. Once you know those topics, you can move to the next section, which is 1.2, summarize fundamental security concepts. There's CIA, non-repudiation, AAA, which includes authenticating people, authenticating systems, authorization models. So you now have... Sorry, we're moving around the screen there. You now have all of these check marks. You have all of these things you need to know. So this is what you need to know. These are the things you need to be able to understand if you're planning to study for your exam. So whenever somebody is trying to determine, what do I do to study? What process should I go through? How long is this going to take me? Well, you've now got a list where you could start checking these off. So go through the first section, the second section, the third section, start studying this, spend about a week, and then at the end of the week, determine how far have you gotten. Maybe you've only gotten through the first section. All right, well, there are 30 of these sections or so, 20 or so of these, so it might take 20 weeks. You can start extrapolating out some type of time frame. You can at least figure out, is this going to take me a month? Is this going to take me 3 months? Is this going to take me longer? You'll start to get a feel for how long this is really going to be to really study every single exam objective, which of course I recommend. And so use that as your barometer. Use that as your marking point so that you can really understand how long it's going to take you to study for this exam. And I think that's probably the best way to kind of focus in on these and understand what's going to be next with them. Let's have a look. Here's another question. This is more of a logistical question from Manassa, who asks, what's the deal with these vouchers? I'm sort of paraphrasing. I don't understand how you're giving us a discount. How does that work? Well, I'm glad you asked. So let's go to the ProfessorMesser.com website. I'm just going to go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Here's the vouchers page. And I've got all these vouchers here. Now, if you were to go out to the CompTIA website, and this is assuming that you're not a student, because right at the top, I tell you, if you're a college student, go to the academic store. They already have discounts available for you as a student. But for those of you that aren't in college, you're not a student, you can pick a voucher. Let's pick an A+ voucher. Well, thank you, Google Ads, for putting that on my screen. So the A+ voucher, the list price, if you were to go to the CompTIA website right now and buy this voucher on the CompTIA website, it would be $253 US. If you buy it from my site, this voucher is $227 US. So you're saving $26 by simply buying it here. It's the same voucher. They don't tell you that, but it's the same voucher. I am a platinum CompTIA partner. I think there's probably 30 of us in the world. So I have the best pricing available for these vouchers from CompTIA, and they give me a break on them. So that part's great. I can pass along those savings to you so that you get your vouchers for less money. But to your point, like, where would you use this? How do you use that voucher? What is a voucher? What in the world does that? So I'm going to go back to the main page of my site. I'm going to scroll all the way down here under more information. And I have under here a step-by-step exam registration process right there, where I've documented how to use the voucher. So it's a step-by-step. I take you through all of the different steps. You go to this page, you register for the site, you click on this thing. I log in. I go to this step on the portal, takes you to the portal, and you log into the portal. There's a schedule now button. I have screenshots and everything here for you. Notice we're not at the voucher yet. So how do I use these vouchers? We're getting there. There's step 3 where we choose the exam we want. We schedule the time and the date. It gives us options on which exams they are. Do you want to do this at a test center or online? Then you can choose how you want to do this. If it's online at home, they give you more information. They give you a set of testing policies that you must agree to and click submit at the bottom. And then you choose if it's in person, you got to find an appointment. All of this, it's part of the normal process, but I've got it all documented for you. The important part on the last page you'll see is, okay, now that you've chosen the exam, you've chosen how you want to take the exam, you've chosen where you want to take the exam and when you want to take the exam, now you have to pay for it. And they tell you, you can come here and pay for it. Here's the cost. They give you how much it costs to take the exam. They tell you when you chose the exam, where it's going to be, how much it is. And of course, at the bottom, it says, here's how much is due, proceed to checkout. And when you go to the checkout page, you can put in your credit, your Amex, your Diners Club, your MasterCard, your Visa. You could choose those and pay for it straight up. But there is right there underneath the order total, a voucher/promotion code. There is where you put in the voucher number that is sent to you. When you purchase a voucher, I email you this code. And then you come back and go through this process and you put the code in right there. And instead of paying the $246 for this, even though you got it for less than that, you paid $220 for your voucher. When you put the voucher code in, it covers the entire cost right there. And it's effectively the same as handing over $246 US to be able to pay for that. That's where the voucher, you go all the way to step 11 before you can finally use the voucher, but that's exactly where you would use it. So that's how the vouchers are used. They are just a way to pay without having to pay with a credit card or pay another process. It's sort of like an IOU that I hand to you that you can then give back to CompTIA, but you have a discount by doing that. So that's the benefit of that. Now, if you're a student, I mentioned this earlier, that if you're a student, there's a different option for you. Let me go to vouchers. So we looked at the A+, for example, and my price on the A+ is $227. That's the price today for one of the A+ vouchers. You obviously need 2 of those to take the A+ exam. But I also mentioned that if you're a student, there's an academic store. So this obviously, I have nothing to do with the academic store. This is something that CompTIA does directly. So you can buy vouchers from the academic store, the ACAD, A+ vouchers are $115. That's a lot different than if you're not a student. So there are some significant discounts available to you if you happen to be a student, a college student. There are also other discounts available for the UK. There's also other discounts available for armed services in the United States. So there's not a lot of discounts. It's kind of it. And the last discount, I guess, would be the ones on my website. But there are different options there. If you happen to be, that $115 very different than $227. So you might, if you're a student, absolutely take advantage of that, which of course is why I put it at the very top of this page, so that if you are a student, go here. Otherwise, for the rest of us slackers, we'll have to buy it straight up. So that's what the point is with the vouchers. That's how they work. That's how you would use them. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on why I do this with the vouchers and how they can be used. Let's go through some more questions that you've submitted. Thank you for putting these in. If you would like to submit a question, there's the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit a question on these. And I would like that. Be glad to do that for you. Let's keep going through this list. This is a good one. This one's more of a question about getting a job in this industry. This question from Destin, who asks, if you know through your experience, how long does it usually take someone to get a job after getting the Security Plus to be like a tier 1 analyst? So let's kind of take a step back and talk about how to get a job in IT. In fact, in this particular case, how to get a job in IT with no experience. All you have are maybe a formal education and some certifications. Interestingly enough, if you look in the YouTube video description of this video, there's a link to a video that I did on how to get a job in IT with no experience. This is a frequently asked question. And the reason I did and if you look at the video, it's a 30-minute video on how to get a job in IT with no experience. But as like most of the videos I do, there's no slack in there. It is chock full of information. And I really stepped through different strategies for education, experience, and other things you can do to help give yourself a better chance of getting your very first job in IT. And it varies widely depending on where you happen to be and what jobs you're looking to get. In some large areas, let's take, for example, the Washington, D.C. area in the United States, which is primarily federal government and certainly armed forces, armed services. So we've got military type use that requires that if you are in IT in the military or anything relating to the Department of Defense, that you need to have your Security Plus at a minimum. Security Plus. There are other certifications that can also be applied there, but Security Plus is probably one of the more popular. So if you were to look at job postings in the DC area for IT, even entry-level IT, you will find that a large percentage of those jobs will say Security Plus or similar or compatible, one of those that fit into that category. But if you were to look at jobs in Miami, you were to look at IT positions in Miami, you may not find, in fact, I bet if we ran the numbers, I would bet there would be a lower percentage of jobs asking for Security Plus because those aren't Department of Defense jobs. And entry-level positions in IT don't tend to focus on security. Security is one of those positions in IT that you would move into after gaining a good bit of experience with operating systems and networking. Very rarely do you see an entry-level security position. Certainly, much fewer number of entry-level security is available as compared to the much larger pool of IT positions available. Most IT positions that are entry-level, you're working on a help desk or service desk. It's a job dealing with an operating system, maybe some networking, but mostly operating systems, generally break fix, where something is broken, you need to fix it. That is a good part of what we do. Really, that's pretty much what we do in IT. If something is broken, we need to fix it. Here's a puzzle. You need to solve the puzzle. If you like solving puzzles, this is a fantastic job because you will just solve puzzles all day. That is all you're doing is solving a puzzle, which to me is just fascinating because it's always a different problem to solve every day. So I think you should look at the job postings in your area to get a better feel on what they would expect. You may find that the jobs in your area don't really care about Security Plus. They might all be asking for A+. They might all be asking for an AWS certification. They might all want Linux Plus. I don't know. I'm not in your area. I'm not in your geography, probably. So you'll have to look at the jobs in your area to really see. And even then, there could be a one-off where maybe in your particular geography, there is a company that does a lot of Department of Defense. So I'm in Orlando, Florida. And in Orlando, there is a lot of hotels. There's a lot of corporations. We certainly have large companies like Disney is in Orlando. It's a good example. There's a big publishing companies in Orlando. There are manufacturing companies in Orlando. There are also Lockheed Martin is in Orlando. They have some big facilities in Orlando. They're obviously a big Department of Defense provider. So if you were to want to work for Disney, there would be a set of requirements for you for IT. But if you were to look at the job postings for Lockheed Martin, I would bet that those job postings are very, very different in their requirements. You know, it's still help desk at Disney, help desk at Lockheed Martin, operating system administration at Disney, operating system administration at Lockheed Martin. Probably similar jobs in their normal day-to-day, but I would bet the requirements would be very different. So make sure you look at the jobs and see what the differences are. And I think there's no one right answer about how do I determine how long will it take to get me a job? How can I get that job after passing Security Plus? It may not be Security Plus. It might be A+. It might be Network Plus. It might be Cisco. It might be Microsoft. It might be anything else. You have to look at the job postings to really know. And I would say if you're trying to get that first job in IT, you should have a net that you could throw that's very broad, it's very wide. So get as many different qualifications as you can and then work yourself into the system. Once you get that first job in IT, it is so easy to move up and around in the business. So you're really looking to get in the door. Take any job that's available. Just get in the door. If I had to give you one bit of advice, that would be it. Just get your foot in the door. Get that first job in IT because that is your springboard to everything else you will do in your IT career. But you got to get that first job. And if you're thinking, no, I want to start in security. I don't want to take this. I know I was just offered this help desk role at this big company, but I really want to work in security. So I'm just going to wait. No, don't wait. Take the sure thing. Take the job. Get in the door. Because then you can start learning the systems, learning the networks, learning the operating systems, and learning the security that you can then use to level up. And in a number of years from now, you'll be in that security role. But you need to work into it. You can't usually jump into security right off the bat, which I think the industry would like you to think that. If you look at some of the people on the internet that are promoting their boot camp, which are just awful things in most cases, a 1-week Security Plus boot camp, there's no way that's any good. Even 2 weeks, there's no way that's any good. So you'll see them promoting that as if there's a job waiting for you on the other side of that. That's not the case. In fact, that's a very difficult thing to place. So get the job, get the most available, the lowest hanging fruit there. You want to find the thing that you're able to get your foot in the door. And then from there, you can go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want in IT, but you got to get that first position into that. Very, very important, and an important thing to consider and put that there. Again, if you'd like to leave a message or leave a question, you're welcome to do that, or a message or a question, either one of those. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That's the link on your screen. Let's go through some more questions that you have put into this list. There was a question, a follow-up about abbreviations, about these acronyms that we are going through. This is from Tyler. Tyler says, is there an easy button? Is what Tyler says. Again, I am paraphrasing. Tyler's actual question asks, How crucial is it to memorize abbreviations? And are there a bunch of any particular ones that are most likely to appear? Nope, there are not. All of these things that are in the exam objectives, not just the exam objectives, but the acronyms that are in the exam objectives. Let's go back to this. So here's section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and there's more section 4 and section 5 of your Security Plus exam. Any one of these topics could appear in your exam. The only thing that really differentiates how much of one or the other is at the very beginning of the document that says Domain 1, which is general security concepts, is 12% of the exam. Domain 2 is 22%. Domain 3 is 18%. Domain 4 is 28%. And Domain 5 is 20%. So if you were to look at this, you would expect that you will have twice as many or so questions from Section 4 as you would from Section 1. Because Section 4 is 28% of the exam. Section 1 is 12% of the exam. The problem you have is that if you look at Section 1, so here's Section 1, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's 4 sections. Any one of these can show up. If this is 12% of your exam, you might say, well, maybe it's just this one. Maybe that's all I'm going to get. There's my 12%. No, it could be any one of these things. So you can't really point to any particular topic and say, this one is the one that always shows up on the exam, because it doesn't. It's all random, and it could be any one of those. So make sure you're familiar with all of the topics, because they could ask you any of them. In fact, they could ask you about the same topic multiple times in different ways, which is even more frustrating, but it happens. It's all random. Randomization is a weird thing. And on your exam, it will be random every time. If you take the exam one time and maybe you don't do well, and you take the exam again, you'll notice it's a completely different set of questions. Maybe you'll get 1 or 2 that are repeated, but they are in a different order, and it's a completely different exam every time. So that's one where you can't rely on what even someone else tells you. Oh, on my exam, I got all kinds of, maybe they're blabbing and they're violating their non-disclosure. I got a lot of questions about IPsec. They asked me every single question was IPsec. I got 90 questions. All 90 of the questions were IPsec. Maybe they say that. It's not the case. But you may be walking in and go, oh, I need to study IPsec. I need to study a lot more IPsec. And you study all this IPsec. You go in to take the exam. You get no questions on IPsec. Of course not. It's just the way it goes. So don't worry don't even listen to what other people are telling you about what's on the exam, because your exam is going to be different. It's going to be random. You need to know everything listed in the exam objectives. That's it. Bottom line. So if you know 90% of the exam objectives, you're probably okay. More than 90% is even better. But that should give you that barometer you're looking for. It should give you that guidance to know if you're really ready to take the exam or not. So that's pretty important. Let's do some more. So let's see other options that are here. Let's talk about renewing our certification. Something we haven't even talked about much today. This is from Anonymous, who says, if I'm already certified, but I don't earn enough CEUs by the expiration date, is CompTIA CertMaster my only option? So let's decipher what this is. So as many of you are probably aware, when you pass your Security Plus exam, you are Security Plus certified, and you are certified for 3 years. Your certification is good for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, your certification expires, which means sometime in that 3-year period, you need to renew it. If you go 3 years and a day and you didn't renew, you're no longer Security Plus certified, and you can't renew it anymore because it's expired. That's not a good situation to be in. Most people will renew their certification sometime in that 3-year period. And there are a lot of different ways to renew. I really recommend looking at the CompTIA website for this. There's a whole section on continuing education, and they give you all of the different options for renewing. I will also tell you in the YouTube video description of this video is a video that I did on how to renew your certification in just a few hours. The other part about that video, though, is I go through very broadly the different ways for renewing a certification, because there are 4 or 5 different ways you could renew your cert. You could take a CompTIA certification. You could take a third-party certification. You could collect CEUs. You could also take CertMaster CE. And that's what this question was about specifically. CertMaster CE, and it's important to designate that the term CertMaster is a brand of products created by CompTIA. So there is CertMaster Learn. There's CertMaster Practice. There's CertMaster Labs. There's CertMaster CE, Continuing Education. So the CertMaster CE product is one that you can sit down and in a day, it's a computer-based training where you spend a day going through it and it will renew your certification that day. So if you've gotten down, this has happened before, as people have shown up in our Discord and said, my certification expires tomorrow. How can I renew it right now? Well, you really only have one good choice available to you, and that's CertMaster CE. And in fact, that person went out, bought CertMaster CE, which is really only a little bit more expensive than paying your 3 years of annual dues, your annual maintenance fee, they call it. You pay a little bit more than the 3-year maintenance fee. And then you go through this computer-based training, you answer all the questions right, and you're renewed. If you don't answer the questions right, you just restart that section and you go through the questions again until you get them right. And then once you get through all of those, you've renewed for another 3 years. Really, it's a great way to renew your certification. It is painless. It takes a little bit of time, but you're not chasing CEUs. You're not having to take another exam. You're not having to send those exam records into CompTIA. And when you renew it, it happens immediately. It's just automatically submitted to CompTIA when you do that. So I recommend CompTIA CertMaster CE all the time for people. This person that came into our website did that. They bought CertMaster CE. They went off. They went all the way through it. They came back the next day and said, I'm done. I'm renewed. That was easy. Now I'm renewed for 3 years. And all I did was go through CertMaster CE. So that is a good option. Now, of course, you could go through the process of taking a higher level exam, collecting CEUs, but there's always a problem with time. We always, as humans, tend to wait until the last minute to do things. So CertMaster CE may be a very good option for you if you're one of those folks who is very short on time. And I highly recommend it. It's a great way to renew your certification. Relatively painless, costs a little bit more than renewing, but probably costs less than taking a third-party exam. And it's one where you can then renew when you're done. Let's do some more questions from you. We got a few minutes left, so let's do that. So let's keep going down this list and see what the different options are. We talked in the earlier in one of the questions we asked on our first hour. In our first hour was about a DLP, a data loss prevention. In fact, I told you the story about the credit card numbers earlier on in this hour. And the question from Jason asks, can you go into details on a SIEM, Security, Information, and Event Manager, and a DLP, Data Loss Prevention? What service provides such? Thank you, Jason, for that question. Also, how is and where is it set up? Now, that's a good question. On a switch, on a port, on a service? How does it work? What is all this? These usually these work closely with each other. They work together. Let's first talk about a SIEM, SIEM. A SIEM is a piece of software that is running on a machine that collects logs. You can take the word SIEM and replace it with log collector. That's what it is. It's a log collector. It takes in logs from every device on your network. And that sounds like it would be easy. It's actually sort of hard. Every device on your network has a different format for their logs. They have a different way of describing what's in the log. Your Windows logs are very different than your Cisco switch logs, which are probably different than your Cisco router logs, which are certainly different than your firewall logs. How are you supposed to get all of these very different log types back into a single database, into a format that you could then start comparing and contrasting the data between all of them? Well, you do it with a device that's smart enough to be able to collect all of those logs, parse them all out, and then store them into this massive database. That is a SIEM. That is a Security and Information Event Manager. It's a log collector. It's a logger. In fact, I think there is a SIM called logger, certainly. And there's certainly some that are very similar along those lines about logging. It is logging data. What's great about the SIM is also has other things usually built into it. Usually there is a nice reporting tool built into it because it has all the data. Why not also have a nice reporting tool? Usually it has a nice way to pull up a dashboard of how things are performing on the network. There's different things that it can do. It can provide you with a different sort of an analytical view of what's happening with the data that you are logging. So take all the log data and start producing some information that I can use to understand what's happening in my network because you've got all the logs. Why not show me something interesting? That's what the SIM is designed to do. But the SIM does not block any traffic. It does not control any traffic. It does not have any security rules. It doesn't apply any policies. It doesn't set up any procedures. It doesn't help you with encryption. It doesn't store any certificates. It doesn't do any of those things. It's a log device. It's a log collector. That's all it does. It just collects logs. It's nothing more complicated than that. DLP, data loss prevention, is a device usually on the network, or it's a piece of software that's looking for certain types of data, and it blocks that data from being transferred. That's like an antivirus. It's like a firewall. It's like a WAF. It's like those devices are designed to control and block and allow traffic. A SIM, all it does is collect logs. So that's really your difference between those two. Is the SIM is a log collector. The DLP is designed to look for personally identifiable information and block it from going on your network. Let's say your DLP has identified someone transferring a Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of credit card numbers, just pulling one out of the air, and it has blocked it from being transferred over your network. The only way you would know that happened is if you logged into the DLP and you looked at the alarm log, and it would tell you, oh, at this date and time, the DLP blocked that particular spreadsheet from being transferred over the network. Wouldn't it be great if maybe you have multiple DLPs spread about your network? Wouldn't it be great if all the logs on that DLP and every DLP were all sent to one central log collector, your SIM? So instead of logging into every individual DLP on your network, maybe you have 10 of them, you're having to log into all 10 of the DLPs to see, did this one block anything? Did that one block anything? How about this one? Did that block something? How about this other one? Why would you do that? Instead, go to the SIM and have it present you with a single view, a single screen that says, show me everything that was blocked on every DLP in our company over the last 24 hours. There it is. Perfect way to do it. So that's how a DLP is valuable, is that it gives you that front end to the world and allows you to do some pretty interesting reporting on the information that's there as well. So let's do some more questions on this list. You really have filled up the list here. We got a little bit of time, so let's do some more in this list. Here's a good question. This is more about logistics of taking the exam itself. There we go. Now you can actually see it. Hey, Professor, another great study group as usual. Thank you so much. I have my in-person exam in 3 days. I want to know if my grade and whether I passed or not is available when the exam ends, or does it happen later? Do I find out later if I pass this thing? Fortunately, thankfully, on the exam, you've got 90 minutes. The clock starts. Go. You have 90 minutes to answer every question on this exam, or as much as you can. Answer. And you get all the way through the exam. You answer all of the questions and you say, okay, I'm at 87 minutes. I've checked all of my questions. I feel comfortable with my answers. I am ready to submit my exam for grading. And I will say, I'm finished now. Grade the exam. And the exam will tell you, oh, wait, not so fast. Thank you for submitting your exam. But before we tell you if you passed or not, we'd like you to answer these set of questions we have for you. And so they have a series of questions they will ask of you. Most of them are demographic questions. Where do you live? What do you do? How long did you study for this? They want to know a little bit about yourself before they give you the answer. They already know, by the way, if you passed or not. They're just not telling you. You have to make yourself go through all of these questions, which have no grade associated with them. There's no scoring associated with them. The way that you answer the question has nothing to do with your final score in the exam. This is all done after the fact. The clock is not running anymore. You go through the demographic questions, and at the end you say, okay, last demographic question done. And on the screen, it will say to you, congratulations or not congratulations. It will tell you you passed or you did not pass. It will tell you right then. You'll know immediately if you passed or not. But it's not official yet. This is an unofficial scoring of your exam. Now, the only way this can really go is bad for you at that point. So let's say they present to you, you have passed. Yay! You've passed your exam. You should feel pretty good about yourself. And as long as the exam process and the way that you studied for this exam was ethical, that it was not in some way considered to be unauthorized in any way, you didn't cheat. That's what I'm trying to say. As long as you did not cheat on your exam, then you passed. But often, well, actually every time this is submitted, CompTIA gives themselves 24 to 48 hours, I believe it is, to verify your exam score. And so they will either decide to check into your exam. Maybe there's something about the way that your exam was scored that they think might be suspicious. Maybe they have evidence on a video of something that happened that gives them reason to think maybe this is not legitimate. These things happen, not with you, but with other people. And they will, in some cases, come back after a day or two and say, you know what? We don't really think you passed. Sorry. That's extremely rare, by the way. It's extremely rare. But there have been cases, and they give themselves that extra 24 hours, 48 hours, where they will say, nope, you didn't pass, actually. We think there was some funny business going on, and here's the next steps for you if you think that's not the case. They give you options and things to do. Very unusual for that to happen. What usually happens is about a day later, you get an email from them saying, congratulations, log into your account, confirm your address, and we will send you a certificate in the mail. That's what usually happens. So for the vast majority of us, the vast majority of us, when we see the sign at the end that says you passed, you really did pass. You can take that to the bank. As long as everything's on the up and up, you did great. You passed, you're done. There have been even situations where people have taken their exam at home. They've gotten close to the end of the exam, or they've gotten the screen on the exam that says you have passed, and people will put their hands up and go, passed, I passed the exam. And the proctor will say, wait, what are you doing? You just went out of the camera. You're talking, you're yelling. That's against the rules. I'm revoking this exam. They do this. This has actually happened. So people have gotten the notice on their screen that they have passed. The proctor is really just following the procedures they have in place, which is you can't say anything. You can't do it. They're very strict about this. And they hit the button that says, nope, I'm revoking the exam. But what this really means is wherever you were when the exam was revoked is your score. Well, if you passed, they can revoke your exam after you passed. You're good. You passed. You're done. And in fact, a day later, you'll get your email that says, no, you're passed. If you were close to the end, you did not submit your exam. Let's say you had 2 questions left and you drop something on the floor and you reach down to get it and you come up and they say, oh, you went outside the screen. I'm revoking your exam. Click. That's a legitimate problem. You went outside the window. You went outside the view of your camera. That happens. But they will score your exam up to that point. So if you pass the exam with everything except the last 2 questions you didn't answer, you passed. And so people have come back to me and said, they just revoked my exam. And all I did was reach down for a pencil. I'm so angry. I said, well, did you pass? They go, what are you talking about? He just booted me out. I'm like, yeah, but you were almost done. So log into your CompTIA account, look at the results, and if it says you passed, you passed. So sometimes things like that happen too. So you will know immediately if you pass the exam or not. Sometimes you will have information come up a day later that confirms that. On very, very unusual and rare situations, you will have additional information that you will have to consider, or CompTIA will tell you really didn't pass. That does not happen very often. I haven't really heard of one of those happening in quite some time. That's how unusual it is. So really, once you see the message on your screen, it's pretty much done. You can take it to the bank. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's get another question or two in, at least if we start stepping through these and breaking these down. Okay. So this is a common problem. Since we're talking about security, Marvin speaks to this one. Here's a random question. I was working on my business cameras. This would be like, I'm assuming, surveillance cameras that you might have up at your company. And as many of you know, most of these surveillance cameras have servers inside of them. Usually these are web servers or some other type of streaming camera protocol server. And there's an authentication process for your network recorder to be able to connect to your camera to transfer down those videos and store them on the recorder. And what happens in a lot of cases is that the credentials used to log into the camera are never changed from the factory. So the cameras that have been put out in Marvin's company, he was able to connect to another business camera because they didn't change the default credentials. They were using the same login as right out of the factory. This is very, very, very common. I want to tell them, but my boss says, leave it alone because it can come back to us. Thank you for the advice. I would say for the vast majority of security issues that you will identify, and this is a very good example of just a simple, relatively straightforward and well-known security concern that some people simply have not properly secured their cameras. And you'll run across things like this all the time. In fact, I will tell you an example of one that happened to me recently. I was contacted by a company that cleans pools. So I have a pool. I live in Florida. Of course I have a pool. So I have a pool. There's a company that cleans the pool. And I no longer use this company. They sent me an invoice and said, we fixed a problem with your pool. Here's the invoice. And they sent me a URL. The URL didn't have any authentication. I didn't log into any system. It just had a big URL, and at the end, it had the invoice number. And then I brought it up. Yep, that's my invoice. Here's my contact information. There's my address. There's my phone number. There's my email. And here's the invoice. I thought I didn't have to log in to do that. In fact, I don't have a login in this company's product. So I went up, and I changed the invoice number, and I added 1 to it. So if the invoice number was 1,000, I changed the number to 1,001 and I hit enter. Yep. I got to see invoice 1,001, which is for a different customer at a different address with a different phone number and a different email. Effectively, I've just now breached their system. Technically, you could make an argument that I was now getting access to something I should not. So they had no security built into that process. So to Marvin's point, there are challenges or things you're going to run into with security that are an issue, that are very clearly something that should be resolved. These really should be more secure. So the question to me was, should I contact this pool company and let them know that they have a security problem? My personal default response in any situation like this is to keep your mouth shut. There's no good reason to tell anyone. There are some good reasons to tell anyone. But the issue with this is that, first, people who work on pools don't understand security. And you trying to explain to someone that you're able to get access to all of these invoices without any type of authentication, that the companies effectively put the invoices on the internet publicly, including mine, and that everybody has access to it. But their response could very easily be, You're a hacker, and I'm calling the FBI. I'm calling the police. You now have gotten into our private information. Like, they don't understand that what you did was not a security breach. You effectively looked in the window of a company. It's not illegal to look in someone's window. It is illegal for them to do something bad inside of their house, though. And if you look in their house, you go, whoa, there's something bad going on in there. How dare you look in our window? We're sending the police after you. That's not the way it works. So this is really the problem, is that even though you have very legitimately identified a security problem, you've not gone through the process of stealing all of, because at that point, if you went through the process of now incrementing through every invoice and you started saving every invoice you came across, that's different. That is illegal. You cannot do that. But identifying a security issue by changing it once and realizing there's a security issue and stopping at that point is legitimate. But I'm not about to tell somebody, because there's no upside for me. There is only downside. And the downside here is significant legal issues, legal problems, people who don't understand security that are now calling the FBI. Like, there's a whole bunch of problems associated with this. So I kept my mouth shut. And to this day, I'm sure, this was only a few months ago, I'm sure the same problem still exists with that software. I'm not going to contact the company. I'm not going to let anybody know I ran across this. You'll never tell. So nobody knows on the internet. This is only seen by like a couple folks. So that's not a problem. But this is not a situation where I'm going to even talk about it. Now, there are people who will find organizations that are willing to pay to be informed of these security issues, and then they'll hand out a finder's fee for something like that. You will get that the ability to lock in that you identified this vulnerability, and therefore perhaps you'll be compensated for that financially. That's not always the case. In fact, it's rarely the case. And if you ever run into a situation where there's a bounty available for something, and it is a formal bug bounty, this company, it's Microsoft, they have a formal process, you can submit it to them, that's different. This is a company that makes pool software. Do you think there's going to be a formal bug bounty process? Probably not. And so it doesn't serve you well to make them, should I make them aware of it? Probably. But it's a little bit of a gray area, isn't it? It doesn't do anything positive for me. Now, if this was a significant problem where I've now discovered a vulnerability with a well-known hashing algorithm that has now manifested itself within this pool software, and it's something that would affect everyone using this hashing algorithm, that's a little bit different. But I'm not going to run across that. I'm not a developer. I'm not a cryptographer. I'm not at that level of working with the cryptographic algorithms associated with that. So it's probably unusual I'd even find that. But if that was the case, that's a little bit different. But in something like this, where it is very specific to this software and there's no bug bounty, there's nothing formal in place, and quite honestly, there's no upside for me to report this, I'm not reporting it. And I think it's fair to tell me that I'm doing the wrong thing there, which is probably a fair thing to say. It's probably fair to say, but Professor Messer, you had a chance to tell this company to fix this software and make it safe for everybody who has their data in every bit of the software that's used. That's true. You're absolutely correct. But there's just no upside. The rules, the regulations, the laws surrounding this type of data breach are aggressive in the United States. They are unbending. And there have been very, very bad situations where somebody well-meaning has been raked through the coals and has had to spend a lot of money just because they happened to point out something that was very, 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 very obvious to be able to work through this. And I could pull up 1, 2, 3, 4 different scenarios that have been very big in the news. You can search for this and find it very, very easily. So that's why I would tell you, Marvin, in this particular case, that if you ran across a company and all they did was they just didn't change the default credentials, we all know that's a problem. You don't need to tell this company. What? You've been looking at our cameras? we're calling the FBI on you because we handle it thing. And now you've been looking in. Why do you want to get a visit from the federal government? Let's not do that. So let's not do it. They get angry. People who are not technical and not in security don't understand the scope of these things. You do, I do, and other security professionals do. But lawyers are not security professionals. Judges are not security professionals. Juries are not security professionals. And the legal system in this country is great unless you're the one in it. And then it's really not that great. So I would really highly recommend you just let them go on with their cameras. Don't send them an email. Don't pretend you never saw it. And I think you'll be okay. I don't think that's something you want to work through. My previous job working as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company, where we would go into these companies and plug in our product, let it run for an hour while we went to lunch and came back, we have absolutely found illegal things happening on people's networks. And so I've had a chance to see what happens when there's something illegal on a customer's network. People that I have worked with in these companies today, there are people that I worked with in those companies who are now in prison. This is not just a theoretical thing. This is not in fact, they did something bad. They should be in prison. They should be locked away for the things that I saw on these people's networks. But there is a real significant security issue associated with that. We don't often talk about that in the world of IT security, that we are often the front folks for finding these things and informing the authorities that something illegal is going on these networks. But it is a significant concern, and they take it very, very seriously, as well they should. I just don't want you involved in that. If you aren't doing anything illegal and it's somebody else's not putting a default, not changing a default username and password, don't put yourself into that position. So that's what I would really focus on. That's not what you want to be dealing with. So, but if you are in the world of IT security, you will at some point run across scenarios on your company network where something does need to be brought to the attention of the authorities, and you will be the point person for doing that. And you just have to put yourself into the mode of, okay, now we have to do this. You have to have all the things in place, and they'll pretty much tell you, here's what we need you to do. Here's the things we need you to collect. Here's the information we need. You'll probably have to work with your internal legal team. They'll work through them and get back to you. So you're doing all the right things, and you are helping the process, and you're getting this to where it needs to be. The people that are the authorities will tell you all the things you need to have done, but it's still uncomfortable. It's still difficult to figure out. People you know and that you have worked with are doing things that they should not be doing. So there's a whole arc of processing that you have to do in your brain when these things happen. You just have to be prepared for it. And after the first one or the second one, you start to, okay, now we know the process to go through. Now we know what we should be doing on this. And fortunately, most of the things that I saw in my day-to-day when plugging into people's networks were either very innocuous or, worst case, not safe for work, not appropriate. They should be doing it at work, but not illegal. When you do run across illegal things, you have to get the right people involved. And you should be as far removed from that as possible. That's my recommendation to you. That's the important part if you're somebody working through those. Okay, let's see if we can finish on a little bit better of a note. So I think this would be a good one. Let's keep going through the list of these. Oh, the stories. The stories I can't tell you are the ones that are probably the fun ones. Let's see other questions. This is a good, just how many? This is a good from Anonymous, who says, so these performance-based questions of which you speak, how many will there be on the exam? Is it only 5? Because you'll notice on my exam, I put 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice-based questions in every one of the exams that's part of my exam book. So that's what he's referring to, is in this exam book, there are 3 exams in here, 3 full Security Plus exams, 5 performance-based questions in each. So there's 15 performance-based questions in here. And then there's 85 multiple choice-based questions in each. So 85 times 3 in each one of those. So the question is, how many are going to be on the exam? I don't know. I do not know. I know there will be some. CompTIA, I know there'll be at least one. There's probably 2, maybe 3. There's some people that have said, I got 7. I'm like, why? You had to work through 7 performance-based questions? You could get a lot. I usually say it's a handful. So you could say plus or minus 5. Maybe you'll get 4. Maybe you'll get 6. Maybe you get 3. Maybe you get 7. But I think it's probably somewhere around 5. It's probably a handful. I don't know the algorithm they use. I don't know the process they use. I don't know how they determine how many you will get. I don't know any of that. All I know is you'll probably get about 5, which is why I put about 5 in my book, because that's a good round, somewhat round number, a half round number to put in there. But I think it's probably about right. If you get fewer than that, great. If you get more than that, at least you're prepared. But that's the idea. It's probably about 5. And that's the reason in my book, 5 performance-based questions. That's usually about the right amount. So that's my recommendation, is to kind of stick with 5 or expect 5. And if you get fewer, that's great. If you get 6, that's not much different. See, I think it's a good place to go for all of those. Let's see if we can get one more quick question through there. I'm sure there's others in this list, or we could go through and break down what these happen to be. Other questions. Here's a good one. This is probably a good one to work with. This is from Edwin, who says, okay, so we can take the exam in a testing center where you get in your car, get on the bus, get on your bike, you go to the testing center. You check in with a person at the testing center. They take you to a room. You take the exam in a specific room that is designed for this testing process. Or you could take your exam at home. Okay. Well, who doesn't want to sit in their pajamas at home and take their exam? That makes perfect sense. We should all take our exam at home, right? Maybe or maybe not. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, of course. You know, the testing center is a known quantity. You know exactly where the testing center is. You know that it's always going to be available. It would be very unusual for them to have some type of issue with connectivity or internet, because they're always up and running. They have designed this room specifically for taking exams, and they have built in processes and procedures for doing this as efficiently as possible. And that's as I mentioned, a known quantity. You know exactly the process, and there's very little setup you have to do. You just show up with an ID and you take your exam and you leave. That's it. Very little required from your perspective. If you take your exam at home, it's a lot more you have to do. It's not difficult, but it's a process, because your house is not as secure as that testing center. And they want your house to be as secure as that testing center. This is the integrity of their exam that they're worried about. And that's why there are all these rules about you have to have a camera. You have to have a microphone. They have to be able to hear you. They have to be able to see you on the camera. You can't move outside the scope of the camera. You can't do that. I just failed the exam just then. You can't have people walking behind you in the room. Failed. Your exam just got canceled. Can't have dogs barking. Your exam just got canceled. So all of these things, you can't talk during the exam. You can't say, would you recommend taking the exam at home? What are the pros and cons? You can't do that. Can't talk. You can't move your mouth. Really, you can't do that in the testing center either. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but you can't do that in the testing center at all. So that's a really good example of the requirements you have at home. For example, if you were to look at our setup right here, I can't take a test from this. I can have one monitor turned on, plugged in. There's more than one monitor here. So you can't do that. So I think if you're someone who is in the right place, and you've gone through the set of processes and procedures, you have stepped through setting up your desk so it is to their guidelines, then you can take your exam at home. You're no problem. Some people just take a laptop, sit in a room, sit in a closet, got a camera, you got a mic, you can sit there. There's nothing else around. You're good. And they'll ask you to take pictures of it. You have to submit pictures. There's a lot that you have to do to qualify this. But if you live an hour away from a testing center, of course you would take it at home. If you are not feeling well, you're a little bit under the weather, but you still need to take this exam, instead of going out and infecting other people, you could stay at home. There's a lot of good reasons for taking your exam at home. And if that's one of those options for you, or you just would rather take it at home, absolutely take it at home. But you need to make sure you read through the requirements that are on the CompTIA website and that you understand the rules and the regulations, because you could be during your exam and then you could put your hand in front of your mouth thinking, would you recommend taking the exam? You're reading the question, you're thinking, and you'll get a message pop up on your screen that says, move your hand away from your mouth. Like, oh, I didn't realize you can't do that. You cannot put your hand in front of your mouth because they want to see that you aren't taking that question and saying the question into a recording device somewhere. That is a legitimate concern. So they'll have you. Now, if you're not ready for that, now they've thrown you. Like, they just told me to move my hand. Now, is there anything else I'm doing? I wonder, I hope I didn't cause a problem. Are we still on? Are we still taking? That could really throw you. But if you've already read through the exam requirements, you're like, oh, that's right. Not supposed to do that. Sorry. Okay, we'll keep going. So all you have to do is just be prepared to step through this. And as long as you understand the requirements, you won't be thrown by anything. You'll know that those types of things are expected when you're taking your exam at home. You'll be able to breeze right through it. And there are people that all the time talk about taking their exams at home. And they say, I've taken 20 exams at home and I've never run into a problem. And that's absolutely legitimate. There's people that take their exams at home all the time and never run into a problem whatsoever. So that should just be the same thing for you. Just be prepared for the process, the procedure. I would highly recommend reading through some of the exam experiences people have had on the CompTIA subreddit, in our Discord, and ask people, is anybody here taking their exam at home? What was your experience like? Was it good? Would you do it again? Would you go to a testing center? If it was up to me, I have a lot of testing centers that are nearby to me. I would probably go to a testing center myself. I'm just lazy. So I don't want to set up a separate system, make sure it's quiet, worry about my internet connection, when I could just walk into a room that's already set up, give them an ID, walk in, take my exam and leave. So it's really up to you and your particular requirements and your particular experience and how you would like to do it. But my local testing centers are pretty good. Check them out. I'm comfortable with them, so therefore I can go to those. But if suddenly they are closed, there's not availability, they don't have any slots available, well, okay, I'll grab a laptop, we'll take it at home. There's always an option. So figure out what makes sense for you. Everybody has a different perspective. They've got a different set of requirements, different ideas. Find the one that works for you. Some people have had great experiences taking their exams at home. Some people have had awful experiences taking their exams at home. So find the one that's comfortable for you, the one that makes the most sense for you. Either one of those, I think, is perfectly viable these days. I think CompTIA and Pearson have gotten very good now at the process. It was a little rocky at first years ago, but over the years, they've gotten a lot better at the process. It's a lot smoother. Things are working a lot better. So I'm very happy with how things have settled down there. I think you'll probably do fine regardless of whichever one you happen to choose. Well, I think that's a great place to kind of finish up where we are. And after all, we will see each other in less than 24 hours. Will we not? Of course we will, because we have a Network Plus study group tomorrow at noon Eastern time. So come on back in about 21 and a half hours and we'll do another one of these, but this time we will do it with questions for Network Plus, which of course, whole new Network Plus transition going on right now between the 008 and 009. If you think you know anything about networking, maybe you should come back tomorrow. We'll do this again. And of course, I'll have my after show again. You can ask more questions again afterwards. So I'll have questions for you during the first hour. You can have questions for me during the second hour, and we can do this. It'll be a great way to end the week. It'll be a great way to end the month. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for that as well. If you enjoyed this video, we would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. We'd love it even more if you went over to our YouTube channel and subscribed. You can find it at professormesser.com/YouTube. Of course, we've got our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more for Security Plus to help you through. We'll be over on Discord after this. If you have any specific questions or you just want to help study with other folks that happen to be there, you can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. We love doing these study groups, and we thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.